Hey everybody, long time no see and welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a look at Corpus. Corpus is one of the coolest, most unusual effects in Ableton, and it's an effect that's not actually included with the basic install, but as long as you have Collision, you should have Corpus. Let's go ahead and listen to how I'm using Corpus in this track. The first way I'm using it is here with this kick sound. So without Corpus on, it sounds like this. Then, when I add Corpus, it'll change to this. So vast difference there. I'm adding this sub-filter boost preset, and it really makes a big difference. I did a similar thing right over here with tight kick. Again, we'll start with it off and then turn it on. You can hear it just completely changes the sound of that kick in a really good way. So together, those two now sound like this, creating a really nice full kick to lay the rest of the track down on. Next, I used Corpus, I believe, on this cabasa loop. So let's again hear what it sounds like first with nothing. With a delay, and then with Corpus. It's a very, very slight thing, but it really changes the tonality, and to me, it goes from just a really dry percussion instrument to something a little more colorful, which is something I like to have in my rhythm tracks. I think I also used it on one more track over here. I had this this track here. Let's take Corpus off. Let's take everything off first of all, except for just the basic sound. This Chaparello pad. If we add the resonator, smooths that right out. We've got our pitches set the way we like. The over-the-top multiband dynamics splits it up really nicely. And then resonator, I've got the pipe resonator preset. It kind of adds almost like a harmonic level to it that I really like. Alright, so let's kind of go through here and see what we can do with Corpus. We'll use this track, which I didn't actually use it on. But let's take those things off. And let's just drag in a plain instance of Corpus and go through each section. So let's start over here. And let's of course open our handy dandy info view. So we'll start here. First of all is the tune parameter, and tune adjusts the base frequency of the resonance in hertz. So you can take this and move it all the way up to 4186 all the way down to 16.35, and you'll see down here it's being updated in real time. Now you may be thinking this is great and all, but why can't I just click here and drag and change to, you know, like C4 or something? That's a good question. What I like to do is drag it all the way to the bottom to where you get 0 cents, and then using the up and down arrows you can go in half steps. So if I just hold this down, in just a few seconds I'm going to be able to get to C4 where I want to be. Depending on which mode or which resonance type you're on, you may also be able to control the fine, or I'm sorry, not the resonance type. This is actually controlled by the sidechain. As we can see in the info view, it says it allows for fine adjustment of the MIDI modulated tuning if the sidechain frequency is enabled. All right, and then down here again you have the MIDI note number, so it tells you what you're getting. Then you have the spread, and spread detunes the two resonators relative to each other. So positive values raise the pitch of the left resonator while lowering the pitch of the right one, while negative values do the opposite. And at 0%, they're tuned the same. So you can detune either side depending on which way you go. All right, so that's the tuning section. Next over here we have the most important section, which is the resonance type. We have a few here. We have beam, marimba, string, membrane, plate, pipe, and tube. And for each of these, or for most of them, we have basic, few, medium, full. And what this is, it's emulating different acoustic surfaces, basically. It's using physical modeling technology to model what these things would sound like. And I think this was done, Ableton collaborated with Applied Acoustic Systems to make this sound really good. So anyway, the point here is that this is the core of your sound, and you can play around. Let's go ahead and listen to what some of these will sound like. So let's start with it off and just play. Alright, so there you can hear the difference between each of the resonance types. And also at the end there I was playing around with this parameter here, which controls the resonator quality. And you can do basic, which is I think just like one harmonic, and then the further up you go, the more harmonics, I guess, that are used. And this is kind of like balancing the sound quality for the performance. But if you've got a pretty good computer, you can go for full. But really I recommend just going with your ears because they all sound quite different actually. Alright, so for our purposes, I think membrane, yeah, almost like a steel drum or something. That one sounds really good. So let's stay with that one. And let's go down one octave. I want this a little lower, so I'm going to push the down arrow until I get to C3. Then it sounds like this. Actually, let's go back up. I liked it at C4. Alright, then we're going to do the rest of this section, the ratio first of all. So the ratio adjusts the ratio of the membrane or the plate size along its X, Y axes. So rather than explain what this does, let's just start at the bottom and slowly ramp it up, and you can hear the difference. So you can hear near the bottom we have kind of a very small sound near the top. Sounds like the sound, the acoustic information is coming from a larger material. So that's basically what it's doing. It's controlling the size of whatever material you've chosen. Let's try on a different one, like I like marimba. Well, marimba actually does not have a ratio because I guess it's set. Let's try beam as well, string as well. Plate. Okay, here's plate. Let's try this one. So you can hear maybe things with a higher ratio are going to be better for more ambient type sounds and bigger sounds, whereas down here you can get more of an instrument. You know, it sounds like you're just striking the material. Alright, let's move on. Go back to membrane, and I'm going to set mine around 66. Let's go over to decay. Decay adjusts the amount of internal dampening, or damping in the resonator, which in effect controls the decay time. So again, we'll start with a very small decay, and then we'll move up. too, if you're using this as almost a reverb type of effect, this can be a very important parameter for you. All right, so let's set it to a place I like it. All right, next we'll go over to material. Material adjusts the variation of damping at different frequencies. So at lower values, low frequency components decay slower than high frequency components, and at higher frequencies or higher values, high frequency components decay slower. So you can see over in the info view, they also say that lower values are going to be simulating objects made of wood, nylon, or rubber, whereas higher values are going to be more like glass or metal. So let's see what this sounds like. Let's start down low at the wood, nylon, rubber, and we'll move all the way up. Alright, so you can really hear the difference there, and kind of these two are the most important. Decay and material are the most important parameters to shape the sound of whatever resonance type you chose. And that's why you can see the XY pad down here is controlling both of these. So you can control them simultaneously if you'd like. So you can go. Alright, so I like it around there. Alright, next let's go over here to brightness. So brightness adjusts the amplitude of various frequency components. At higher values, higher frequencies are louder. So again, we'll start all the way at the bottom, negative 100%, and go all the way up to 100%. So just as you'd expect, it kind of changes how bright the effect becomes. Next we have inharmonics, and this adjusts the pitch of the resonator's harmonics. So at negative values, frequencies are compressed, increasing the amount of lower partials, and at positive values, frequencies are stretched, increasing the amount of upper partials. So if you're wondering, what are partials? What does it matter if it's compressed? You can certainly read more about it in the manual, but I recommend really just listening to it and seeing how it affects you, and that'll give you a better understanding than a bunch of abstract terms. So again, we'll start at negative 100, go to 100. Alright, so I like it quite low there. And then over here we have the listening section. We have listening left and listening right. And these are kind of like your imaginary mic placement for the resonance source. So adjusting the location of these, for example, at 0, you're going to be at the center of, in this case, the membrane. But the further up you go towards 100, the further away from the center and closer to the edge you're going to get. So let's have a listen and see how it changes. So you can imagine that you have a pair of stereo mics, and that with the listening left and listening right parameters, you can adjust each of them, moving them closer to the center or further away from the center towards the edges. All right, so you can strike a balance you like there. And then finally down here we have hit. And hit sets the location on the resonator at which the object is struck or activated. So at 0%, the object is hit at its center. Higher values move the activation point closer to the edge. So this is similar to what we were talking about with the microphones, but with this one, you know, what Corpus does, it simulates hitting these resonance types, this controls where you're hitting it. So again, we'll start low, go high. So you can hear the difference there, and you can also see at the end, for every resonance type, some of these parameters may get blanked out. For example, with pipe and tube, especially tube, almost everything is. So again, you just have to experiment and see which one matches the sound you're going for. All right, but let's put it back on Membrane. And now that we've covered this section here, and we've covered the tuning, let's go over to this section. And we've got here a nice filter, so we can do a bandpass filter of the effect. And this is just like in many other effects in Ableton. This will allow you to kind of do a quick EQ or filter on the effect in case you have some ultra high frequencies that you're getting that you want to get rid of, or you don't want that low end sound muddying up your track. So let's start with it wide and kind of narrow it down. Alright, so that sounds good. You can also, of course, control it manually instead of dragging this around here. So you can control your bandwidth and your center frequency. Next we have the width. So this is just the stereo mix between the left and right resonators. At 0, they're fed equally to each side. At 100, they output exclusively to one channel. So you can make it either stereo, mono, or anywhere in between. And this, depending on how you're using the effect, can have a really drastic effect. So let's hear that. You can really hear the difference between 0 and 100. I'm going to keep it at 100 because I like the way it sounds, and this is a percussion track. Next we have the bleed. Bleed mixes a portion of the unprocessed signal with the resonated signal, and at higher values more of the original signal is applied. This is useful for restoring high frequencies, which can often be damped when the tuning or quality are set to low values. So this can really revive the sound after you've kind of destroyed it here. So let's start at 0 and move it up. In this case, I didn't do anything too terribly destructive, and I'm using the full setting here, so the bleed doesn't do too much. It's a very subtle change, but I'll go ahead and keep it high so that we can really retain the integrity of the original sound. Then we've got the gain. Gain boosts or attenuates the level of the processed signal, so if I want to bring the effect up or down, I can use this. And then, as usual, with Ableton effects, we've got this wonderful dry-wet mix, so you can balance the dry input signal and the signal sent to Corpus. So this doesn't cut resonances that are currently sounding, it just stops new input signals from being processed. And that's an important difference so that you can know the difference between bleed and dry and wet. They are different functions. So let's try and get a balance. There's all wet. All dry. I like 40%. All right, so that's the basic part of Corpus, but we've also got another section over here, and this is the more complex section. We've got the LFO section, so the low frequency oscillator is what LFO stands for. Let's turn that on. And LFOs are kind of a whole nother topic, but let's kind of go through the parameters quickly. So first we've got our shape, and we've got you know, the normal choices. You've got your sine, square, triangle, sawtooth up, sawtooth down, and the two noise types here. Let's stick with a sine wave. You've also got the amount, so how much LFO modulation is applied. So let's go ahead and turn it up and see what happens. So you got almost like a phaser-like effect. We can also control the rate at which it moves. So right now we've got it set to hertz. We've got a very low one, but we can also click here to make it musical, or I guess synced by beats. So here it's 2. We can go all the way down to 64th note, all the way up to 8 bars. So let's do a single bar. Let's bring the amount back down a little. And as usual with the LFO, we've got our phase settings, so we can keep, we've got, of course, 2 LFOs, and this sets their phase. We've also got the offset, so you can shift the starting point of each LFO along its waveform. I don't really want to mess with that. And also, if you've got it in hertz, you've got these 2 modes, the stereo mode and the spin mode, and spin can be fun. So the LFO can add all sorts of motion to a very static loop or something, and that can liven up your track a good bit. And then the final section of Corpus that I'd like to talk about is the sidechain. So we talked about sidechaining before with the compressor plugin. Sidechaining in Corpus, let's select, for example, this pad, the Chaparral pad. And we've got a few interesting parameters here. So first is the frequency. So the tuning of the resonance can be determined by wherever we're getting our MIDI. So I chose the pad because I think it's the only, well, we could have done the piano as well, but the pad is quite consistent. So it's gonna keep a very nice, keep everything in tune. So you'll notice now over here, the tuning section, we've got these numbers because it's being controlled by this side-chained input. And we've got new parameters over here, transpose, so we can go, for example, up 12 to pitch it up an octave, or all the way down 48, up 48. We'll keep it the same though. And then now we can control the fine setting to get things really in tune. And you've also got the spread, again, to detune the resonators. Let's hear how this sounds though. Let's put it let's do plus 12. So you're really just tuning the frequency relative to whatever your sidechain input is telling it. Also under frequency, you've got last and low. This just determines note priority. So last means the most recent note gets priority, low means the lowest note gets priority. So depending on the part you're sidechaining in, you may want just those bass notes, or you just may want the last note played. And then you have the pitch bend range. So you can control the range of pitch bend. And then you've got the off decay. So this is how MIDI notes off messages can mute the resonance. So this the percentage here, when you turn it up, determines the extent to which MIDI note off messages mute the resonance. So you can play around with this a lot to control the length of everything. Let's see if it'll make any change. I'm not sure because of the kind of the nature of this MIDI. It's just one long note, so I don't think it'll really make a difference. But let's see what it does. Yeah, no difference because it's just one long note. But let's say we do the piano then. So there at 100%, the MIDI in the piano, which is not playing. Here, let's try that again. So again, you might have to play around with this to see how it works. This track isn't really set up to deal with that very well. But anyway, this is just a way for you to control the resonance with some outside MIDI. And it can be very powerful. But in this case, I don't really need it. All right, so that's pretty much it for Corpus. I think I covered every part of it. It's a very deep plugin, and there's so many uses for it. I really recommend that you go through all the presets. There are a good number of really useful presets. I didn't realize, but I guess I'd used one here on the piano as well. So let's hear what that sounds like really quick. So it can just add some nice, interesting resonance to your sound. Alright, well that's going to be about it. Next time we will be covering a simpler plugin, a much simpler plugin, Dynamic Tube. So be sure to check back for that one. Alright, thanks everybody.